the millennial generation and Gen Z and beyond are incredibly emotionally sensitive. With that sensitivity comes a black and whiteness. Like if I'm not feeling it, I can't do it. But the reality is there's an incredible capacity for an emotional connection. Okay, friends, the story begins. We are exploring the secrets of the Talmud. We're on Brachot 34b. And today's topic is going to contrast the difference between the Baal Teshuva, the penitent, the person who had made the conscious decision to return to their faith, and the Tzaddik, the righteous person, the person who kind of just remained innocent their whole life. Who's greater? And what we're going to learn here is not just the superiority complex. It's a little bit deeper than that. What we're going to explore here is, number one, the mechanics of teshuvah, the mechanics of repentance. We're going to understand on a deeper level the real purpose for existence and the role of reward and punishment in this world. So we're going to touch on a lot of core theological ideas in Judaism, and this is important. Let's dive in. And Rabbi Chia bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan said, all of the prophets only prophesied their prophecies of consolation. There's all these positive prophecies of like what it's going to be like in the future. So the previous paragraph says that they're talking about the Messianic era, right? So Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, and Rabbi Yochanan, no, they're talking about with regard to penitence, somebody who's going to be a Baal Teshuva. They're going to tap into this incredible reward described by the prophets. But with regard to the full-fledged righteous, to the tzaddikim, to the tzaddik, it's stated that no eye has seen it, God, aside from you. So a Baal Teshuva, we know what their reward is going to be. The prophets describe it, but the tzaddik's reward, way beyond, right? Rabbi Chia bar Abba, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, is essentially saying that a Baal Teshuva, somebody who does Teshuva, somebody who repents, has good things coming for him. A tzaddik has even greater things coming for him that we can't even yet describe. Okay, that's opinion number one. But then there is the counter sage, Rabbi Abohu. Rabbi Abohu disagrees. And the Gemara notes that this statement disagrees with the opinion of Rabbi Abohu, who holds that penitents, Baalei Teshuvah, those who do Teshuvah, are superior to the righteous. As Rabbi Abohu said, in the place where penitents stand, in the place where the Baal Teshuva stands, even the full-fledged righteous do not stand. As it is stated, peace, peace be upon him who is far and him who is near. Peace and greeting is extended first to him who is far, the penitent, and only thereafter is peace extended to him who is near, the full-fledged righteous. So over here we have a debate between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Abohu. Rabbi Yochanan says the tzaddik is on a higher level than the Baal Teshuva. And Rabbi Abohu says the Baal Teshuva is on a higher level than the tzaddik. Question.
Yeah. Chronologically speaking, in terms of time, when was the Tanya written relative to that discussion? And the reason I ask is because, before when you brought up the subject, I raised my hand because I thought I knew the answer immediately based on what we learned in the Tanya. Right? Because we learned in the Tanya that it would I'm not going to get the Hebrew quite right. The one who returns.
Yeah.
Is mightier is not the right word. It is closer to Hashem,
right?
Because of the effort required to return, as opposed to Tzaddik, who lives in this space. I don't want to say it's effortless, but it kind of is. The Tzaddik doesn't know what it's like to return in that way.
He's never tasted the forbidden fruit, right?
Exactly. So that's why I thought I knew. But now the question is, when was the Tanya written relative to that discussion?
So the Tanya is correct, right, from the perspective of Rabbi Abohu, right?
Oh.
And the Tanya was written, let's say, 250 years ago, roughly. The Talmud is roughly 1,500 years ago, maybe 1,800 years ago. So But let's take a step back for a second. Whenever you have a debate in the Talmud, and over here it's not really a halachic debate, it's a more of a theological debate, right? But nonetheless, whenever you have a debate in the Talmud, how do you know which path to follow, right? So the answer is I don't know. I'm not that much of a scholar, right? So I have to rely on scholars who do know. So I would look at the halachic authorities, whether it be the Shulchan Aruch or whether it be the Rambam, Maimonides, or others, and see who they follow. And it's the same with theological discussion as well. Maimonides, in his halachic compendium, has a whole section on the laws of Teshuva. And I am prepared to share the screen with you because I want to show you this. If I could find it. Hold on. You guys see it? You guys with me? Okay, number 4. A Baal Teshuva should not consider himself. Again, this is like the Maimonides like encyclopedia of halacha, where he takes all of the halacha in the Talmud and basically codifies it so it's in an organized way, and you just have the law without the discussion. And he says in section 4, a Baal Teshuva should not consider himself distant from the level of the righteous because of the sins and transgressions that he committed. This is not true. He's beloved and desirable before the Creator as if he never sinned. Furthermore, he has a great reward, for he has tasted sin, yet separated himself from it, conquering his evil inclination. Our sages declared that in the place, quoting the Talmud, right, in the place where the Baal Teshuva stand, even the completely righteous are not able to stand. The level of Baal Teshuva transcends the level of those who never sinned at all, for they overcome their evil inclination more. So Maimonides is clearly saying that we're going to stick with Rabbi Avohu's interpretation, not Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation. And he gives a reason. The reason Maimonides gives is because they had tasted the forbidden fruit. They've decided to separate from that forbidden fruit and thereby conquering their inclination. Whereas the righteous person, and I guess what we mean by righteous can mean different things. The tzaddik can mean different things. But let's say the innocent person, right, who maybe didn't have the same level of exposure, doesn't have the same level of Yetzer Hara, doesn't have that same drive, that same passionate drive for things he shouldn't be passionate about. To him, okay, of course you didn't sin. Of course you're innocent, right? This is what the Rambam says. Similarly, by the way, you have a similar idea. But let me take a step back. I want to quote another reason, another explanation of why the Baal Teshuva would be on a higher level, why the returnee would be on a higher level. And this is from the Zohar. And this is what the Tanya was quoting, by the way. When you're referencing chapter 7 of the Tanya, where it talks about the Baal Teshuva coming back with an even greater fervor and even greater passion. So the Tanya is actually quoting the Zohar, which says that the Baal Teshuva, the penitent, is more passionate. The tzaddik, the righteous person, is, he's doing what he needs to do, and he might even do it with love and feeling, and he's genuine. But there's a certain intensity that the Baal Teshuva has. I see the comment over here. The guy who never had water, right? And he's even more thirsty. He's even more ready to drink, more than the guy who had been more hydrated the whole time, right? The guy in the desert who's parched knows how precious the water is, how important that water is. The Baal Teshuva has been deprived for whatever reason, whether from his Yetzer Hara or circumstantially, has been deprived of the beauty of the Torah, of the beauty of Judaism, and he comes back with a certain passion. He comes back with a certain intensity. The Tanya takes it a step further and says that what is motivating this passion? His negative past. What's motivating the thirst? The desert. So post facto, the Baal Teshuva is actually elevating his past because his past is bringing him closer to God. Sin is actually getting him closer to God, not further. Quite ironic, right? And that's why the Talmud, in a different section, in Tractate Yuma, which is the tractate that deals with Yom Kippur, it quotes Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, who says that teshuva from love takes sins and transforms them into merit. A real Baal Teshuva is not just moving forward and not letting his past haunt him. A real Baal Teshuva is changing his past, literally changing his past. And the reason is because his past, he's allowing his past to change his future. And now those sins become merits if he has real teshuva from love. And I'll share with you two stories from a different section in the Talmud that emphasize this idea. Story number one is from Tractate Avodah Zarah. There was a dude. His name was Elazar ben Dadaria, and he had a very strong Yetzer Hara. He had an incredible lust, and he would hang out with women of ill rapport, let us say. And he had an addiction, I guess. I mean, I assume these days we'd probably classify this guy as having an addiction. Um, it says in the Talmud there was not one woman who he didn't spend that was in the vicinity that he didn't spend time with, who he shouldn't have been spending time with, and certainly not in that capacity. The Talmud says there was one woman whom he discovered across the sea somewhere that I guess she was a famous woman of ill rapport and would seduce people, and he wanted to engage in that. And he went great lengths to go find her, crossing the sea and whatever it took to get to that journey. You could see how committed he was to sin and how careless he was about his soul. And while they're amidst the act, just to show you how low this guy was, she was grossed out by how low he was, even though she was also obviously a person of ill rapport because she herself is engaging in seducing people. And she says, somebody like you is never going to do teshuva. Somebody like you is never going to get close to God. And that statement rung very loudly in his ears. And he just like says to himself, what am I doing? What is going on? And he stops and he goes to the corner and he says, the Talmud says he looks at the heavens and he says, heavens, save me. And the heavens say, we're not going to save you. The commentators explain that this isn't literal, that the heavens were necessarily talking to him, but the heavens might mean like he's referring to God, because then he says afterwards to the mountains, save me, help me. The mountains say, we're not going to save you. The commentaries say it's referring to his surroundings. You know, he's blaming his surroundings. It's because of the environment I grew up in. No, we're not saving you. Take responsibility. And he's going around trying to find somebody whom to blame, and nobody's taking responsibility. And finally, he realizes that he needs to take responsibility for himself. The Talmud says he sits down and he begins to cry. And he ended up expiring. He ended up passing away. And the Talmud says that the Talmud then references him as a Rabbi Elazar ben Dodaya, as a rabbi, even though he wasn't a rabbi, but they call him Rabbi Elazar ben Dodaya because a rabbi is a teacher, and he taught a powerful lesson to the world about the power of teshuva. And the Talmud says that he was able to. It says some people acquire the world to come, heaven, over a lifetime, and some do it in just one moment. In that one moment at the end of his life, he was able to elevate his entire life. His entire life of grossness, his entire life of sin and instability led him to an incredible passion and desire to connect to God. And because of that level of teshuva, his entire life had become elevated. Another thing we learned from here, and this is just a parenthetical point, I think it's just worth mentioning. And honestly, I'm not even saying this for you guys, but for whoever might be watching the recording and the broader world, whoever might be listening to this, teshuva, repentance is something we have to take responsibility for. In contrast to other religions, where they're told that somebody's going to come and save you and that you're incapable. But Judaism strongly believes, based on the Torah, that we are capable and God does believe in us, and which is why we have to take agency and responsibility for our lives. And maybe we need rabbis or people, guides who can get us there, who can inspire us, but we have to do the work ourselves, and we are capable of transforming our life and even transforming our past. This is the Baal Teshuva, who is greater than the Tzaddik, the guy who had just been perfect the whole time. Okay, story number two. I almost forgot the second story. Story number two is from Tractate Tainit. Tractate deals with fasting. I may have shared this story in the past in one of our Siddur lessons. You had this incredible scholar. He was a yeshiva boy, learning in yeshiva. And apparently, again, this is in the age of the Talmud. So this is going back thousands of years ago, or at least close to 2,000 years ago. He has this incredible lust. And again, there was this famous woman, maybe it was the same one, probably not, of ill rapport, whom he was pursuing. Right? He plays hooky in yeshiva, a break from Talmud study, and goes to this forbidden address, engage, and is ready to engage in illicit behavior, inappropriate behavior. And apparently, the Talmud describes this quite graphically. This woman had layers to her home leading to the bedroom. And each layer in each room, he'd get closer and closer, removing another garment, getting closer to engage in sin. Until finally, he got to this point where he sees his tzitzis. And he looks at his tzitzis and he goes, what has happened to me? What am I doing? The Torah says you should wear tzitzis in order to remember the mitzvahs of God. Right? They serve as a reminder. And he's looking at his tzitzis and he goes, what is going on? And he's like, I'm out of here. And she's like, what do you mean? He says, it's not you, it's me. No, sorry. I'm gonna get canceled for that, right? He says, it's not you, it's me. And he like ducks out of there. She has no idea what just went on. I think he ended up explaining to her like it's what the tzitzis are and what's going on. He ended up leaving. He slips back into yeshiva, opens up his book, and continues studying. Now comes to this yeshiva. This lady shows up to the yeshiva, looking for him. She's intrigued. Who is this guy of incredible strength, incredible values? And she shows up to the yeshiva and she says to one of the rabbis, I'm looking for so and so. And he says, yeah, you probably come to the wrong address because this is a yeshiva. She says, no, I want to get to know this person. This is an incredible person of incredible values. And he says, you can't marry him. You're not Jewish. She ends up converting to Judaism. They end up marrying each other. The Talmud then says that those same bed sheets that were going to be used for sin, ended up being used for a mitzvah to connect to God. The Talmud brings this story to illustrate the power of teshuva, to take something that is sinful or potentially sinful and transform it into something positive. The passion of the Baal Teshuva has the ability to really transform the world in many ways. And certainly the Baal Teshuva can transform himself. However, I want to be fair to Rabbi Yochanan's position, defending the Tzaddik, right? Why did he say the Tzaddik is greater? So there's a fascinating talk of the Rebbe describing Rabbi Yochanan's position, that the tzaddik's on a higher level. They're talking about different things here. I want to give you some preface. In the Rebbe's later years, and really in many of the Rebbe's talks, there's incredible paradigm shifts where you see certain things and it's like, whoa, I never thought about Judaism that way. And the Rebbe points out that the Baal Teshuva does have certain limitations that the Tzaddik does not. You know what the problem with the Baal Teshuva is? And again, we can't choose our life circumstances always, but what we're really talking about are mindsets. Should I have the Baal Teshuva mindset or should I have the Tzaddik mindset? The Baal Teshuva's mindset is incredible because there's incredible passion. But I want to reference back to the Rambam, back to Maimonides' text for a second. I'm going to read it again. This is text 4. Baal Teshuva should not consider himself distant from the level of the righteous because of the sins and transgressions he committed. This is not true. He's beloved and desirable before the Creator as if he never sinned. Okay, that's beautiful. Furthermore, he has great reward. I want you to remember that word, reward. Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. For he has tasted sin, yet separated himself from it, conquering his evil inclination. Our sages declared that in a place where the Baal Teshuva stands, even the completely righteous are not able to stand. The level of Baal Teshuva transcends the level of those who never sinned at all, for they overcome their evil inclination even more. The Baal Teshuva is greater in the context of reward. He's going to get greater reward than the tzaddik. But in context of our mission and purpose in this world, and in the context of worldly impact, which is what Rabbi Yochanan was referring to, the tzaddik is actually greater. And the reason is because the focus of the Baal Teshuva, conquering the evil inclination, rejecting the evil inclination, which is why there's that intensity, right? There's that almost fear of reverting back to your old lifestyle. I got to separate it from it. And I got to connect as best as I possibly could. The focus of the tzaddik, he's not conquering his evil inclination or his animal soul. He's engaging it with the world in a service to God. If I may put it this way, and I'm paraphrasing the Rebbe's words here, the Baal Teshuva often has to reject his feelings and human experience because they haven't been in the right space, so he could better connect to God. And with that is going to come intensity. With that is going to come passion. With that is going to come incredible, admirable commitment. The tzaddik is going to engage his feelings and human experience in his relationship with God. So which one of the two is going to bring God more into this world? Right? Not the one running from the world, but the one who can have space for God in this world. You have a comment or question?
Yeah, question. So trying to remember the Tanya discussion on this. And as I recalled, it was like even for the tzaddik, the Yetzer Hara is there, but it's been completely silenced.
Right.
And so I'm a little bit confused when, I mean, you said he's the tzaddik is engaged. You didn't use the word Yetzer Hara, but it's what maybe I misunderstood. Were you trying to convey that? Well, sorry, I'm not very clear on this question. When we were learning the Tanya, you were saying, okay, the ultimate place to be is when you have conquered the Yetzer Hara to the point where the Yetzer Hara is participating in the mitzvah.
Yes.
And so it's not like the Yetzer Hara is gone. It's there, and it's
you've converted him,
persuaded.
You've transformed him.
Exactly, transform. So in the terms of the tzaddik, how do you refer to a tzaddik's Yetzer Hara? Was it never needed to be transformed because it was always pure? Well,
yeah, it's not really a Yetzer Hara. It's more of It's an emotional capacity. It's not bad. It's a yetzer. It's just not bad, right? Yetzer means a bad yetzer.
Okay.
Let me put it this way. I saw this in a teaching from the Alter Rebbe. He says that very often in life we have to fight our animal soul. Sometimes, again, these are different languages to sort of understand the same concept. But he says we have to fight our animal soul because it's trying to get us to be more self-centered, right? At some point, we have to ride the animal soul and embrace the fact that this relationship with God is actually meaningful to ourselves. That's riding the animal soul rather than fighting with the animal soul. The Baal Teshuva is fighting the animal soul. The Tzaddik is riding the animal soul. So I'll tell you a story. I heard this from Rabbi Manis Friedman. Rabbi Manis Friedman has ran a school, an educational center for college age students. And this one girl this was back in Minnesota, and this one girl had attended and was super inspired, on fire about her Judaism. And she comes home, and the mother is freaking out. Right? It's not uncommon. She calls up Rabbi Friedman. And I guess this girl didn't grow up with a strong Jewish educational background. And she calls up Rabbi Friedman and says, "What did you do to my daughter?" He says, "Well, what do you mean? What happened?" "She's come home and she's gone crazy." "What do you mean she's gone crazy?" "She's keeping Shabbos." "Uh-huh. Tell me more." "She's keeping kosher." Keep going. "She's committed to marrying exclusively Jew," or whatever, you can, okay. What's the problem? "My daughter's gone nuts." He says to her, "Let me ask you a question. You're Jewish, right?" "Yeah." "And who gave birth to her?" "I did." "So what do you want from me?" "What did I do?" "You're Jewish. You gave birth to her. Now you're blaming me that she wants to connect to her Judaism. What does this have to do with me?" But then Rabbi Manis Friedman, when conveying this story, added a very important point. If the mother called and complained and said, "My daughter lost her sense of humor because she's so religious," she would have a very valid complaint. Because rather than engaging her personality in her relationship with God, she suppressed her personality at the expense of God. And that's not why God put us here in this world. You could do that in heaven, right? You leave your personality here, right? Our mind and heart stays, and we go up to heaven and we reconnect to God. But the point in coming down to this physical world is to impact the physiological world, but also the psychological world. How can I allow God in this world, physical world, if I can't even make space for him in my own heart or in my own personality, my thought process? The Baal Teshuva may have a certain discomfort with his Yetzer. And like the Rambam said, he's conquering his Yetzer. But the Tzaddik has a certain comfortability with God. From the Tzaddik, again, these are mindsets. It's not just, we all have life circumstances which don't dictate always, what we're going to be. But in terms of the mindset, how we're approaching our service to God, approaching it like a tzaddik means I'm engaging my heart and mind, not just running away from it's like a marriage. I think a marriage is a beautiful analogy to understand our relationship with God, because in a marriage, one can live in constant fear of the marriage, of something going downhill, of something going south. So I'm going to put extra effort. I'm going to constantly put in more work. That's necessary. That's a good thing, right? That's the Baal Teshuva. I'm going to be better. And then you have the tzaddik approach to the marriage. I'm going to make this a very comfortable experience for both of us. Not out of fear, but out of love, out of connection. Not just, okay, I'll do whatever it takes. I'm confident. This is going to work. This is fine. We got this. Right? Which one is healthier? Which one is more sustainable? Which one is more connection, right? So going back to our relationship with God, which one is going to bring God in this physical world? In terms of connection to God and reward and punishment, the Baal Teshuva is on a much higher plane. But in terms of the impact and bringing God in this world, the Tzaddik is very comfortable with God, which is what we're here to do, make this world comfortable with God. Now, I'll share with you something interesting, going back to the Tanya, because the point of the Tanya is very much that not everybody's going to be a tzaddik, right? Manage expectations properly, because the tzaddik is for the tzaddik, but not everybody's holding there. So let's understand who we could really be. And in one of his talks, the Rebbe says, well, then how is this relevant? So the Rebbe said that as we get closer to the Mashiach era, we have to start living from the Mashiach perspective, the Mashiach mindset. And in the Mashiach era, in the Messianic era, we're all going to be like tzaddikim. Our heart is going to be filled with God. The whole world will be filled with the knowledge of God, right? As the earth covers as the sea covers the earth, like Isaiah says. And we have the capacity to start experiencing that now on some level. That's the Mashiach mindset. And I believe, truth is, I shouldn't say it's my belief. I actually saw this source now that I'm thinking about it. As we get closer to the Mashiach era, the Messianic era, there's a reason why people are more sensitive now, emotionally sensitive and fragile, more than ever than before. Historically speaking, or certainly, compare now to the past 100 years. Our generation, and especially the millennial generation and Gen Z and beyond, are incredibly emotionally fragile. And I would say not just fragile, sometimes it's fragile, but it's sensitive, it's sensitivity. And with that sensitivity comes a black and whiteness. Like if I'm not feeling it, I can't do it. Right? How can I take this job if I'm not passionate about it? Whereas a previous generation may have said, brings in the money, pays the bills. What do you mean? Right? There's been more divorces now than back in history because people are genuine. I'm not saying it's a good thing necessarily. It has its drawbacks, but it is coming from a place of wanting to be genuine in the relationship. And we're not just going to have a political marriage. And again, all of these are can be debated, have their pros and cons. But the reality is there's an incredible capacity for an emotional connection as we get closer to the Messianic, or as we start to live. And that's because we're supposed to live with that tzaddik mindset to the degree that we're able. I'll leave you off with this thought. I think this is interesting. The Rebbe pointed out in this teaching that I've been referencing that Israel had been divided up into territories based on the 12 tribes, which will be reinstated when Mashiach comes. Which portion was the Beis HaMikdash on? Which tribe? It was on the tribe of Yehuda. With most of it was on the tribe of Yehuda. There was a split. The altar, the Mizbeach, was on the tribe of Benjamin. What's unique about Benjamin compared to all the other brothers? All the brothers sinned. They sold Yosef. They ratted Yosef out. They did Teshuva. They became Baal Teshuva. They became penitents. Benjamin, he wasn't even born yet. Innocence, complete innocence. Where is the altar going to be? In the innocence, the emotional innocence. That's the pinnacle where the fire of heaven is going to come down and where we're going to channel God into this world. The altar in our own heart lies in the innocence. And even if we had a life that wasn't so innocent, right? We all do. Nobody's perfect, but we can tap into that space of innocence deeply within ourselves. Okay, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.